Good day. I would like to start by addressing issues that are of the highest importance for the well-being of our country and the safety of its people. Just a moment ago, I received an urgent report from the Minister of Internal Affairs, Ihor Klemenko, concerning the recent attack on Ukrainian journalist Yuri Makarov. There was an attack, there was a knife stab. Thankfully, Mr. Makarov is alive. The knife was left at the scene. Forensics and investigative teams are working. One version being considered is that the attack was linked to his professional activities, specifically, his coverage of Russia's war against Ukraine. I believe the Ministry and the National Police will soon provide a more detailed explanation. We wish him a speedy recovery. Secondly, our team is currently working in Paris. Today, I had a conversation with President Emmanuel Macron about the meeting of European teams and representatives from the United States. We reached a shared understanding. First, we are aligned in our views on the actions taking place, including diplomatic efforts. At this moment, we are actively participating in crucial discussions taking place at the level of national security advisors from 4 significant countries, the United Kingdom, France, Ukraine, and Germany, all of whom play a vital role in the ongoing matters of international security. Such a meeting has taken place and is ongoing. There will also be a meeting at the level of defense ministers. From our side, the delegation includes the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the head of the Presidential Office, and the Minister of Defense. Our Minister of Defense is working directly with his French counterpart in a separate meeting. Furthermore, there is an important and highly significant meeting currently taking place between the foreign ministers of the 4 countries involved, which will later be followed by a joint session that will include a representative from the United States, Mr. Witkoff. His participation is expected to offer valuable insights and contributions to the ongoing discussions. At this meeting, we are discussing Ukraine's position on a security contingent, security guarantees, and the relevant coalition, which you may already be aware of. This is a separate track of our work. Also under discussion is the issue of ceasefires and the repeated violations of ceasefire agreements by the Russian side, in our view. I cannot yet say what the outcome of their meeting will be. We will hear from all parties and learn the full details. President Macron and I have reached a clear agreement that neither my team nor his has the authority or mandate to engage in discussions regarding the territorial integrity of Ukraine. This matter is not within the scope of our current negotiations. The mandate I have given my team is to discuss the issue of a ceasefire, including various formats. Preferably a full and unconditional ceasefire. Unconditional. However, we are also open to discussing unconditional ceasefires limited to civilian infrastructure, energy facilities, and maritime routes, topics we have discussed previously. These are the various formats on the table. Ukraine remains ready for an unconditional ceasefire, as we have stated multiple times following proposals from the United States. What will be proposed today, we shall see. There may be something to talk about. Now, I'd like to highlight several key points. Today, I received an important report from Commander-in-Chief Zelenskiy. I want to thank and commend the armed forces of Ukraine, our security and defense forces. Today, there was an offensive by the Russian Federation in the direction of Pokrovsk, in the east of our country. The brunt of this assault was taken on by the 14th National Guard Brigade and the 117th Brigade. Ukraine, having carefully anticipated and prepared for this offensive, successfully and completely destroyed the attacking group. As a result of the operation, 115 units of enemy equipment were obliterated, while 200 enemy personnel were killed and 30 more sustained serious injuries. We thank our armed forces for their service. Last night, there was another offensive by the enemy in the Zaporizhia direction. There, the enemy lost 80 personnel, 117 were wounded, and 40 units of equipment were destroyed. This is what we have been warning our partners about. Russia is expected to launch several waves of offensives, in the Sumy, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhia directions, and possibly again in the east, where they haven't attacked for some time. What is crucial is that Ukrainian forces were ready and responded. It was not unexpected, and that matters. Tomorrow, I will introduce two major sanction packages, one targeting Kremlin propagandists, and another targeting the manufacturers of Iskander missiles. At this very moment, quite literally right now, our team is actively working in real time, in close coordination with the American side, on drafting and finalizing a memorandum that addresses the issue of critical minerals, which is of paramount importance for both our countries. I'll be able to share more details on that soon. I can also tell you about the details. And finally, some important but unpleasant news. We have now received confirmation that China is supplying weapons to the Russian Federation. We are prepared to speak about this in more detail. As of today, we have received comprehensive and detailed intelligence reports from both the security service and military intelligence, providing us with crucial information regarding the current status of gunpowder supplies and artillery capabilities, which are essential for our defense operations. I firmly believe that by next week, we will be in a position to provide much more detailed and comprehensive information, especially with regard to the evidence we are gathering, which strongly indicates that certain Chinese representatives are actively involved in the manufacturing of weapons on the territory of the Russian Federation. This information will be crucial for our ongoing efforts to address the situation.
Thank you for this opportunity. Halina Ostapovets, Live News. I have a question. You've likely heard Mr. Witkoff's statement following his talks with Putin. He claimed that a deal is supposedly being considered involving 5 Ukrainian territories. What do you know about this? What are we realistically prepared to agree to in this regard? And how close are we now to a comprehensive ceasefire agreement? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As I've already said today, we are discussing an unconditional ceasefire. And until that ceasefire is in place, we are not discussing territory. You know my position, and you know our red lines. We will never recognize any of our temporarily occupied territories, our Ukrainian land, as Russian. Never. Thirdly, I am of the opinion that Mr. Witkoff has, to a certain extent, aligned himself with and adopted the strategy put forward by the Russian side, which raises significant concerns regarding his stance on the ongoing issues at hand. I think it's a very dangerous approach because, whether consciously or not, I don't know, he is spreading Russian narratives. And in any case, that does not help. I don't see him having any mandate to discuss Ukrainian territory. These territories belong to our people, to our nation, and not just to us today, but to future generations of Ukrainians. So frankly, I don't understand what he's talking about. Yes, we've heard it, but we've heard it as just another one of Mr. Putin's delusions. I didn't expect that he would have people willing to continue those narratives and spread them in other civilized countries. That's why I don't take it seriously. As for a comprehensive ceasefire, Ukraine is ready to support it. We are already providing our support for the cause. However, we firmly believe that Russia is not yet fully prepared for what lies ahead. As we have mentioned on several occasions, they are planning multiple waves of offensives, each aimed at seizing as much territory as possible. Their ultimate goal is not to engage with us as people, but rather to view us purely as land, measuring, taking, and controlling our territory as if it were nothing more than a strategic asset to be seized. Their intention is to deliberately escalate the situation, ramp up the intensity of their attacks, and use this heightened conflict as a means to strengthen their negotiating position in any future discussions. This is precisely the strategy they are pursuing, employing missile strikes, conducting offensive military operations, and orchestrating provocations, all designed to stoke the flames of the conflict and increase its intensity in the critical period leading up to the final negotiations. Here's what they do. The closer President Trump moves toward implementing serious sanctions and taking decisive actions against Russia, particularly in response to their refusal to support a comprehensive ceasefire, the more Russia's position will weaken. As a result, this will bring us all one step closer to reaching a point where we can bring an end to the war, as Russia will find it increasingly difficult to maintain its stance in the face of mounting pressure. That's how I see it. And that's what this depends on.
Thank you. Olsya Safronova, Bloomberg. I have a question regarding the mineral agreement. Could you please clarify, is the use of Ukraine's gas transmission system, particularly the pipeline, currently being discussed with the United States in the context of this mineral agreement? And does Ukraine, For example, consider the possibility of resuming gas transit through our pipeline system? Is the American side insisting on this? Thank you.
First of all, let me speak to the status of our discussions. The technical meeting was indeed productive and positive. And I think that's a good sign. It took place in different formats, in person in the US, and also online. The discussions are ongoing, they continued yesterday and today. Our first Deputy Prime Minister is working closely with Mr. Besant's team, and directly with Mr. Besant himself. The American side suggested that we go back to the earlier stages of this process. As you know, we had already been working on a serious agreement, one that was meant to be submitted to Parliament and passed through the proper legal procedures, with input from lawyers to ensure it would be a success for both nations. That's why the technical meetings were positive, and we saw a willingness from both sides to move toward each other. A few days ago, the US side proposed taking another interim step while legal teams continue drafting the full agreement, namely, signing a memorandum of intent. That's what it's called. A memorandum of intent. And our intentions are clear, and they are positive, constructive, and we've demonstrated that. So, while this would not be the agreement itself, the memorandum of intent could be signed online today, yes, today, and our side said, okay. Right now, our first Deputy Prime Minister is working with the US team on finalizing the text. To be honest, I believe this memorandum is an important and reasonable first step. Why wouldn't both countries agree to that? As for the pipeline, it has not been discussed. Although I believe that if we want to talk about this asset, we can. But of course, not in the sense of allowing the Russians to send their gas through the pipeline and profit from the war. We've made it clear many times, there are other sources of gas, there are other countries, and if there are any such proposals, we can revisit that. But as of now, no one has returned to this topic. And let me be frank, the Americans have not pushed us in any direction on this.
Tetiana Pasova, Ukrinform. Mr. President, in your recent interview with CBS, you said that Ukraine is ready to purchase Patriot systems. But is the American side actually willing to sell them? Or are there perhaps other partners ready to do so? Have there been any signals from the US administration? Thanks.
Regarding the Patriot systems, we understand that there is a major shortage and that it's a serious issue globally. I see this not just as a defense need, but as part of broader security guarantees for our country. For example, the United States, as the holder of the license, the owner of the brand and the relevant manufacturing capacity, could play a leading role in providing Patriot systems to Ukraine. And Ukraine is ready to purchase them. We are prepared to buy at least 10 systems. I conveyed that minimum figure directly to President Trump during our phone conversation. He told me that America would work on this. At the moment, aside from that exchange, I have no further updates. We are aware of how many such systems exist in the Middle East and in which countries. We're holding separate discussions on that front. We also understand how many systems are currently in Europe, in the United States, and in certain Asian countries. In short, we are searching everywhere. However, if we consider this situation within a broader context, particularly as a key element of Ukraine's long-term security guarantees, including potential scenarios that involve a multinational presence on the ground, then it becomes clear that even after the war ends, or more precisely, at the moment when a full and comprehensive ceasefire is announced, it will remain absolutely essential for Ukraine to maintain access to advanced and reliable air defense systems such as the Patriot. These systems will be vital for ensuring the continued security and protection of the country, especially in the face of any future threats. We are ready to buy them. I'm also in separate discussions with European partners, because this involves significant financial resources, if the United States is ready to sell them to us, and that's why I emphasized this to the US President, we will be ready to make the purchase. I'm also in talks with several countries that are willing to help Ukraine finance such a deal.
Good day, Mr. President. My name is Victoria Lukovenko, Agence France Presse. My question is about the so-called energy ceasefire. Ukraine considers the start date to be March 25, which means nearly a month has passed. First, how many times has Russia violated the ceasefire during this period? And second, in Ukraine's view, will this ceasefire end on April 25th? And what should we expect after that date? Thanks.
We coordinated with the United States and confirmed that we were ready to support their proposal for a ceasefire starting on the 25th, yes, almost a month ago now. The Russians spoke of a different date. However, I firmly believe that what they promised to the United States on our behalf did not accurately reflect the reality of the situation. The ceasefire they allegedly committed to, something we never agreed to, was never accepted by us. That being said, as you are well aware, we have always remained open to any constructive approach that could help move things forward. But even this so-called commitment that they made, they themselves ultimately violated it, demonstrating a lack of sincerity and respect for the agreements they supposedly put forward. They were the ones who proposed something, and they were the first to break it. The first strikes targeted Kherson and our energy infrastructure. As for how many times they've violated it, I don't know the exact number, but it's many. What's important is that we've been working with our partners in a specific format. I instructed the Foreign Intelligence Service and government officials to document every violation and send it in detail to the United States. To be honest, we saw the document the Russians sent to the US. Lavrov sent it, claiming we were hitting their energy infrastructure. That's simply not true. They make things up, inventing details, they're quite creative, let's put it that way. So here's the situation. So I don't think that? See what the situation is. Yes, they have reduced the number of strikes on our energy infrastructure, that's a fact. But I want to draw your attention to something else. The overall number of Russian strikes has not decreased. That is a deliberate part of their overall strategy. They have intentionally scaled back their attacks on energy facilities in an attempt to create the illusion of restraint, aiming to make it appear as though they are respecting and adhering to a ceasefire. However, despite this deceptive shift, they continue to use the same number of drones and missiles on a daily basis, including ballistic missiles, which are specifically aimed at targeting and damaging our civilian infrastructure instead. This strategy is designed to mislead the international community and undermine efforts for a genuine and lasting peace, all while continuing to inflict harm on our country. They just shifted focus. Fewer attacks on the energy grid, more on other civilian targets. So whether it's the 18th, 20th, or 25th, it doesn't matter. The volume of attacks against Ukraine this past month has not decreased. That's what I want to emphasize. Could they switch back tomorrow and increase strikes on energy facilities while reducing attacks elsewhere? Of course. Not because they want peace, but because they want to keep striking us. They operate with a fixed number of drones and missiles per day. That's why we have a clear understanding of the approximate number of drones and missiles used by the Russian side each day. We understand that, and we track the data precisely. The numbers haven't changed. So what kind of ceasefire is that? It's a lie. Is the number of our wounded civilians, the number of our people killed, lower or higher? That's statistics. And when we talk about statistics in general, when people say they support a ceasefire, that they support stopping the violence, we all need to. I understand, it's war. So right now, let's not talk about the military, with all due respect, yes, just for a moment. Because they are fighting. And unfortunately, there are losses there. But if someone talks about a ceasefire in the context of civilian infrastructure, whether it's energy-related or not, what difference does it make? If, during these strikes, even as they shift the targets, the number of civilians killed and wounded continues to grow, what kind of ceasefire is that? What they really need, let me say this in their language, is to stop lying. I'll say it in Ukrainian. They need a ceasefire on lies.
Mr. President, good day. I hope you can hear me. I have two brief questions regarding the critical minerals agreement. In the latest draft, there are phrases suggesting that Ukraine's past assistance is now considered a debt Ukraine must repay. And secondly, the issue of China is resurfacing, specifically, China providing military aid to Russia. Could you please elaborate on that?
Thank you for asking. Regarding China, unfortunately, and I will be completely honest with you, we are not exactly shocked by the situation, as we had anticipated some level of involvement. However, we truly did not want to face or acknowledge the stark reality of the facts that have now come to light. The evidence we've seen is something we hoped we would never have to confront, but it has become impossible to ignore any longer. I had a conversation with the Chinese leader during this war. I asked him directly about weapons. He gave me his word that they would not sell or send weapons to Russia. But unfortunately, we are now seeing different information. In any case, we have already gathered substantial and undeniable evidence showing that China and Russia are actively collaborating to enhance and strengthen Russia's defense capabilities. This partnership between the two countries is becoming increasingly evident, with both sides focusing on advancing military technologies and increasing their strategic coordination, which poses significant concerns for regional and global security. And those are troubling facts. It's one thing when weapons end up on some open, or let's say not entirely open, market, where weapons are traded. The story of when there are products in these markets. If products made in China start to appear on such a market, and if the Russians acquire them, or if another country purchases them and later transfers them to Russia, and in cases where these markets are also flooded with weapons from various other nations, then that's one particular situation. It creates a complex web of transactions that complicates the situation further, making it much harder to trace the origins and accountability of these items. This is a scenario that raises serious concerns, as it could involve multiple countries indirectly participating in the escalation of tensions. But it's a completely different story when we see actual cooperation, not just smuggling or resale, but real collaboration between the two countries in this area. And frankly, we must acknowledge that. As I mentioned, we've seen certain documents, and we believe we'll be able to share some of them next week. As for the agreement itself, look, at this moment, there's nothing concrete to discuss in terms of a final, serious agreement that would be ratified by Parliament. As I've said, the legal teams are still working on it, and they are working productively, but the issue of debt cannot be part of that agreement.
Good day, Mr. President. I'd like to ask about the recent Russian ballistic missile strikes on Kryvyi Rih and Sumy. Is there any way our partners can help us detect Russian ballistic missile launches in advance, so we can destroy them before they strike our civilian cities? Thanks.
We're not receiving any additional intelligence specifically about the launches themselves. What our partners do provide are alerts. They help us understand the direction and identify when ballistic missiles are launched. Our intelligence is working, and we're receiving substantial assistance. That's precisely why there was such a great deal of concern when there was a real risk of delays or even a potential freeze in the sharing of intelligence from the United States. The prospect of this happening raised serious worries about the ability to respond effectively to emerging threats, as timely and reliable intelligence is crucial for making informed decisions and coordinating actions, especially in situations that are as complex and fast-moving as this one. Because, let's be honest, this cooperation allows us to warn our people in time and simply say, a ballistic missile incoming. I'm telling you frankly, while we work on our own and have access to various kinds of intelligence, what really concerns us is this particular area. This is the direction. The one thing we don't have. We cannot see when the ballistic missile launches. That's where our partners help. Let's be honest, they are primarily helping protect our civilians. And, after all, this is about state defense. It's a major protective mission, a humanitarian mission, for sure. The key issue here is the detection of ballistic missile launches. It's important for us because, as you know, the closer you are to the front, the less warning time there is, much less. And that's exactly why, without this critical intelligence, we would have seen far more incidents similar to what happened in Kryvyi Rih. The timely and accurate information we receive is essential in preventing such attacks and minimizing the potential damage. Without it, the risks increase significantly, and we would be unable to take the necessary precautions or make informed decisions to protect civilians and strategic infrastructure. Still, many ballistic missiles are intercepted, thanks to various systems, primarily the Patriot system. So, when we talk about limited missile numbers, we're fine for now, but when we know there's a risk of a missile shortage and a limitation on intelligence, that becomes the biggest risk for our people. We won't be able to tell them that a ballistic missile is coming, we won't see it. Thanks. You should also know, we don't talk much about our air defense systems. But the Ukrainian armed forces have been effectively destroying a lot of enemy air defense systems, including S-400s and others. It's hard work, but it's been successful. The results are correct and necessary. Just to provide some additional context, in case you're interested, back in 1992, Ukraine had a total of 225 air defense systems. This number is significant when we look at the historical context and the evolving state of Ukraine's defense capabilities over the years. It highlights both the challenges and the advancements Ukraine has faced in terms of military technology and air defense infrastructure since that time. 225 anti-air defense systems. By 2019, there were about 60 left. The majority of those systems disappeared during that period, and honestly, I have no clear idea where they went or what happened to them. It remains a mystery, as there was little transparency or accountability at the time regarding the fate of these crucial defense assets. The absence of these systems has undoubtedly had a significant impact on Ukraine's ability to protect its airspace and respond effectively to potential threats over the years. By the year 2000, Ukraine was down to 168 or 169 systems, meaning fewer than the original 225, but still significant, about 170 systems. By 2019, we had roughly 60. From 225 to 60. The reason I'm mentioning this is not to focus on who sold, gave, or stole these systems. That's not the issue right now. What matters is understanding the density of Ukraine's air defense. Why? To understand the scale of Russian defenses. That's what I'm for. Because our systems weren't just sold to the Middle East, they ended up in Russian hands as well. That's what I'm referring to. I won't go into how many systems they have today, that's unnecessary information.
Good day, this is Ilya Novikov from Associated Press. I have a question on a mixed topic regarding the attacks on civilian cities that took place in recent weeks, Kryvyi Rih, Sumy, and last night's attack on Dnipro. There hasn't been a clear and consistent response from the White House to these attacks. Donald Trump, when responding to journalists about the attack on Sumy, called it a mistake but didn't clarify what exactly he meant. How do you interpret this lack of a clear response? And in your opinion, what does such a response or stance from the US communicate to the Kremlin? What signals is it sending to them? Thanks.
There was a reaction from the minister, from Secretary of State Rubio, and his reaction was clear. He condemned the attacks. And we are grateful for that. A more serious reaction came from many of our other partners, where they condemned the attacks in stronger terms and made it clear who the Russians are. The reaction from the American political side, however, has been noticeably softer and more varied, with different political figures and groups offering a range of responses. I believe that the relatively mild response from the administration is a clear indication that the current policy is being maintained and continues to guide their approach to the situation. They are convinced that this approach represents the most appropriate form of diplomacy, and I would characterize it in the same way based on their perspective and actions. Referring to this particular Russian operation in Sumy as a mistake is not entirely accurate, as it overlooks the broader strategic objectives and context in which this operation is taking place. I'll explain why. We were targeting this person, aiming for a child, and hit her mother instead. Excuse me, but that's murder, and the strike was aimed at the center of the city. This was not a strike on the front line. Claiming that I was targeting the front, but it was a mistake, sorry, is something we cannot justify, especially when missiles strike the heart of a city. It's not just a single missile that landed off target. When multiple missiles hit, it goes beyond the scope of a mere mistake. At that point, it's no longer something that can be dismissed or explained away. I also clearly recall, and I believe it was in Sumy, the incident involving cluster bombs. This type of response, when cluster munitions are deployed, signifies a deliberate decision to cause harm. It involves intentionally inflicting damage, resulting in casualties, and specifically targeting individuals, which is a conscious and calculated choice in the course of military action.
Do you believe that the ongoing pressure and the support provided by European countries, particularly the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, will be sufficient at this moment to put enough pressure on Russia and ultimately bring the war to a conclusion, especially considering the more measured and moderate stance taken by the United States in comparison to its European allies?
I firmly believe that we should express our gratitude for the steadfast and substantial support we have received from European countries, as well as for the gradual improvement in the level of support and intelligence sharing from the United States, which has played an increasingly important role in the current situation. We are grateful for this, as it is helping. But is it enough to end the war? I don't think so, and I don't think our partners will be offended by that. If it were enough, the war would already be over, or at least we would have a ceasefire. What this indicates is that the pressure currently being applied is insufficient, and as a result, the Russian forces are still in a position where they can continue conducting the war in the same manner they have been, without significant setbacks or changes to their approach.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. You've just referenced the ongoing military offensives taking place in the regions of Sumy, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhzhia, areas that continue to be central to the conflict and have seen significant activity in recent weeks. According to your intelligence, what are the Russian army's strategic goals for the spring and summer? Could you provide more details on their intentions and how far they plan to advance? And do you think the US and European partners are responding appropriately? Thanks.
In line with the narrative that they are following, as we discussed earlier, there are still voices among our partners who continue to advocate for a policy concerning the 6 regions of our country, which also includes the Crimean Peninsula. It is crucial for us to fully understand and assess where the primary areas of focus and the main directions of their operations are concentrated in order to grasp the broader strategic implications. Where have they already targeted? Some of these operations are ongoing, others are not yet. So, we already understand their main directions. It is essential that we maintain a robust and unwavering position during negotiations, one that not only places pressure on us but also ensures we have strong allies at the negotiating table, working alongside other states. In addition, it is equally important to secure tangible success in the regions we are focused on, those areas that are already temporarily occupied or partially occupied, so that we can strengthen our leverage and strategic standing in any discussions. To exert such pressure, they need to capture more territory, as I mentioned earlier, more square kilometers of land, to pressurize Ukraine, specifically in these regions. About these regions. We are fully capable of analyzing these regions, and in reality, it's not an especially difficult task. In addition to this, there is no doubt that they are determined to achieve this goal. However, to succeed, they must take action on multiple fronts. This will help to demonstrate to some of our partners, unfortunately, some of them, who we truly wish would be much more aligned with us, that they need to exert greater pressure on Russia. It is crucial for them to make it clear that Russia must be treated as a nation that is willing to make compromises, in order to bring about meaningful change in the current situation. To achieve this, they will try to use their successes in other territories. We're talking about areas like Sumy, where there's a large accumulation of military forces. This is why they're acting in this direction. They are also targeting Chernihiv, not by accident. At present, we are successfully preventing them from concentrating a sufficient number of troops near Chernihiv, as well as limiting their ability to amass significant forces near Kharkiv or Zaporizhzhia. This ongoing effort ensures that they are unable to concentrate their military resources in these key areas, which helps to maintain stability and prevent further escalation. We are not allowing them to concentrate enough forces for a full-scale offensive. So, there are waves of attacks, but along the Sumy front, there is a large concentration, over 600,000 troops. That's the reality. These are the main directions, and you understand them. Their political statements align with their actions on the battlefield. Our task is not to give them any opportunities. For this, we need help. The second part of your question was about aid. Is it enough? I partially said that if it were enough, we would have already ended the war. But to say we have a major artillery shortage today, I wouldn't say that. We have it. But we distribute it very effectively. We started manufacturing it ourselves, and we're doing well. The Russians are scrambling, as they say, because they are targeting our factories now. And not just by accident. I believe we are systematically working to reduce the artillery shortage. Closing this gap is an important task for us. The second issue is drones, where we could use more help. The Europeans can provide more funding directly to our private sector. That would help a lot. And it really has helped us. The year 2024 was very challenging, but drones were extremely beneficial. Domestic drones have become an alternative, let's say, an indispensable alternative to the shortage of artillery shells. We have significantly increased drone production, several million drones, more than we promised. We have achieved serious results, twice as many as originally promised. But what's important is not the numbers, and what matters is that it's been able to stop them in some sense. A big congratulations to our incredible soldiers, especially many of our battalions and operators. They are performing an outstanding job under incredibly challenging circumstances. Their dedication, skill, and resilience are truly remarkable, and their efforts continue to make a significant impact on the ground. This gives us the ability to hold out, but for how long can we hold out? We need to accelerate the help from our partners. We see a decisive attitude in the words and actions of the German side today. I sincerely hope for continued and even stronger support moving forward, and I'm pleased to say that we are already receiving vital funding to assist with our efforts. Additionally, we remain optimistic about receiving further assistance, particularly in terms of air defense systems and other crucial tools, although I won't go into specific details about those at this moment. Regarding the UK and France, they are helping and providing a lot of funding. Northern Europe is also contributing significantly, Norway, Denmark, Sweden. They are providing a lot of direct funding to our drone companies, for which I'm grateful. But we have to acknowledge that when it comes to aid, I think this will be the main answer. Today, our domestic sector is operating at 60% of its capacity. Only 60%. There is no funding for the other 40%. This doesn't mean we had 100% before, there was only 10%. But today, we've expanded significantly, and this has greatly helped Ukraine's defense capabilities. If we could secure additional funding for 100% of our production capacity, it would make a huge difference.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thanks.